What's up, Notjust developers? Welcome back to a new live stream, and today we're gonna talk about Expo SDK 49. So very recently, Expo launched the latest version of the Expo SDK, and it comes with a lot of exciting new features and updates that I would like to share with you in a very practical way. So updates are including better debugging with Network Inspector. We're gonna see that today in today's video. Reg DevTools that is built in Expo CLI, a lot of updates around libraries and components provided by Expo, such as Expo Blur View that is now available on Android as well, and even new services like EAS Insights that can provide detailed insights about the usage of your application. And I know that you are most excited about the next feature, and the next one is the Expo Router V2, which comes with the latest version of Expo SDK 49. Here, there are a lot of actually new features. There are a lot of exciting things that I can't wait to get into. However, for this, I prepared a separate live stream, which we're gonna do tomorrow as a continuation of today's live stream, just to focus on everything that is new in Expo Router with the static routes, static generated websites, and a lot of other cool features. Anyway, today we're gonna focus on exploring Expo SDK 49 in a real project. You know that I always say that the best way to learn is by using project-based learning, because it's better to actually show instead of telling something, and I think this is going to be easier for you to understand how these new updates will affect you and your development workflow. So that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna build a very small, but at the same time, exciting application. We're gonna use NASA API to fetch data about astronomy pictures, to display it in our application. And by building this, we're gonna learn about the new and exciting features of Expo SDK 49. I prepared some pre-made components in order for us not to spend time on designing some components, but rather on looking into and experimenting with the new features. So make sure to download the asset bundle, which includes all of these pre-made components that we will need today. And also I prepared this step-by-step guide that is actually very easy for you to follow along. It contains every single step that you have to do, starting from creating a new project all the way till the end. So if you open the step-by-step guide on the side, download the asset bundle from here, then we are ready to go. All of the links you can find in the description of the video here. So yeah, let's roll the intro and let's get started. All right, hello everyone in the live chat. How are you doing, guys? So these 2 days I prepared a lot of exciting things for you, a lot of blog posts, the newsletter, and 2 live streams dedicated to Expo SDK 49, and tomorrow we're gonna do the Expo Router V2. But yeah, let's get started and let's initialize an empty project using Expo SDK 49. For that, navigate into a folder where you keep your projects. And let's go ahead and do npx create expo up. Let's do add latest in order to take the latest version of the create expo application tool in order to get the latest version of expo. For the name of application, I'm gonna call it a pod, and a pod stands for astronomy picture of a day. That's what we're gonna build today, or a pod, something like that. And let's start with a template. For example, the template blank. I want to start with blank, even though starting with the tabs template will give us the tabs pre-installed and a lot of things already there. I want to start with blank to show everyone how to get started, how to set up and to cover all of these features. So if we run this command, it will initialize an Expo application. However, right at this moment of doing this, I also have to do add SDK-49. Let's press enter. This will start initializing. If you're watching this later, most probably you don't have to add the add SDK 49, because right at this moment there is a regression issue with Debugger for Android in React Native 072, and while this is being fixed, the Expo is still defaulting to SDK 48, so that's why we need to specify SDK 49. But again, this is only for if you're doing this right now live with me. I think in a couple of days it should be fixed, and just using npx create expo application with the blank template will initialize it with SDK 49. Okay. All right, so now we see our project is ready. Let's go ahead and open it in Visual Studio Code or in any editor of choice. So it's called Pods. Let's go ahead and open it here. I don't need the terminal anymore because I can open a terminal right inside Visual Studio Code here on Window, and I think, no, Terminal, New Terminal. Or if you know the shortcut, good for you. I'm gonna zoom in a bit. Actually, before starting the server, you can give it a try and start the server, but we're gonna waste some time with doing that. Let's go ahead and set up Expo Router right from the beginning to use for this small demo. The same project we're gonna use tomorrow to deploy and render the web version as a static generated website. So that's why we will need Expo Router here. If you go to our step-by-step guide, there should be the setup Expo Router. You can open up the documentation of routing for the installation, and also I added here all the commands that you have to install. So I'm gonna copy the first one to install router dependencies, and let's open the terminal here, and let's install all the dependencies for Expo in our application. Installing 7 SDK 49 modules with npm. Perfect. If you're watching it after a very long time, then double check the installation guide, the official installation guide from Expo. So here with manual installation, you see the command that you have to run to install the dependencies and the other things, but we're gonna do that step by step here together. To enable web support, we're also going to have to install React DOM and React Native Web. So let's go ahead and grab this second install command. This will allow us to run on web as well. And what I also want to do is I want to enable TypeScript in this application. So the easiest way is to simply rename any file in our application from GS to TS or TSX in this case. So I'm going to rename application from application.js to application.tsx. And in the next step, if we go ahead and start our development server by running npm start, we will be asked, Expo will see that we have a tsx file and will ask us if we want to install TypeScript and the types for React. So let's press enter to install them. Wait a couple of seconds. And now if we look in package.json, we will see that we have the types, the TypeScript, React Native Web, and all the other dependencies that we need. We can go ahead and press I to open on iOS simulator. You can also scan this with Expo Go, this QR code. If you want to run it on your physical device, you can press A to open it on Android, even W to open it on web. We're going to do that in a moment. As we can see, we are also asked to update the version of Expo Go. So if we're doing this from terminal, this happens automatically. On your physical device, you would have to update it if it's not updated automatically. So if it's not working on your physical device, make sure to update Expo Go. And with that being said, we have our application running here on an iOS device. We haven't finished actually the full configuration because we see the entry file of app.tsx, not necessarily the entry file of Expo Router. So there are a couple of more steps we have to do. So let's check the documentation. One of them is the entry point file that can be sent in package.json. So let's copy this main, and we specify which should be the first file that is loaded in our application. Because right now it's the app entry.js, so let's replace it in package.json with Expo Router/entry. Okay, then modify project configuration. We need to add the scheme, and the scheme in app.json, somewhere here, we will add the scheme, and this scheme is basically how do we want our URLs to look when trying to when using deep links. So for example, the scheme of a website is HTTPS. Facebook is FBA thing. In our case, let's do, I don't know, not just astronomy. It's quite a long one, but it's not that important for now. And another thing is for the web, if you scroll down a bit, we need to specify that the bundler should be Metro. And with that being said, we can restart our server with npm start again. And let's rerun it on our iOS device. So what's going on here? Expo Router, first argument of should be a string denoted directory. Expo Router app root, first argument required context should be a string. I think we should clear the cache because I started with... is it clear? Yeah, not offline, just clear. Just to make sure that the cache is not messing with our application. No, it's still the same. So what did I forget to do? Scheme, modify, oh, the bubble config. So one extra step. I'm rushing. I just want to do it in very short amount of time to be quick and sweet. So that's why I'm rushing it. Yeah, let's add the plugins inside our babel.config. So let's go ahead in our project, open Babel config, and under presets, we can add the plugin for Expo Router. Now we can stop the server, start it with clearing the cache, and we can run it on our iOS. I'm pretty sure now it's gonna work. And here we see the welcome screen from Expo Router. And at this moment, we can already go ahead and delete the app.tsx because we are not using it anymore, because that was the old entry point. Now the new entry point should be a file inside our app directory. We don't have yet an app directory, but if you press on this button on the emulator to create it, it automatically sets up application folder and the index.tsx. This is the home screen of our application, and all the rest of the screens will be added to this app directory. That's how Expo Router is working. It's a file-based navigation system. We simply create files, and the files are automatically mapped to screens, and we can navigate between them. More about this we're gonna learn tomorrow, but I thought it's important for everyone to be on the same page about this app directory and Expo Router. Now our application is running Expo Router, and we can go ahead and probably I can do git add git commit init and set up Expo Router. So as you can see, setting up Expo Router took a very short amount of time, and you can use this tutorial even to set it up in your own project, because I imagine that not everyone is starting from a blank project, and that's why I didn't want to use the tabs template. Anyway, to get into the next step and to start exploring the Expo SDK updates, as I said in the beginning, I want to do that with a real project, with something that we can show and see how it will affect us in a real life scenario. I don't want to play with the hello world because that's boring, and it's not gonna help us learn better. So for that, I have prepared a very simple application, and I have prepared a couple of pre-made components that you can get by downloading the asset bundle, link in the description below. And let me actually find it as well, because we're gonna start importing some of the components from there. So here it should be. At the moment, that's our asset bundle. Later on, I'm gonna add also maybe the presentation and other sources, because we're gonna use the same one for tomorrow. But right now, you will see the OSRC directory. So here we will have a couple of things, but let's go ahead and drag and drop in the root of our project with copy folder. Now, before we jump into it, let's have a look at what do we have here predefined. As I said, what we're gonna build is we're gonna build the application that will render the astronomy picture of a day using the NASA API. So here from the guide, you can open the NASA API. Here we have it. You can generate an API key, or you can use the demo key, which allows a couple of requests for free. And even generating the API key is fully free. Only thing you have to do is fill in this information and you'll receive a key on your email, and it's gonna allow you to send a lot more requests. So what we are interested from this API is this astronomy picture of a day. And the astronomy picture of a day, like for every single day, it gives us a new image about cosmos, about astronomy, and with some more information. For example, in the data here, I have prepared some dummy data for people that will not be able to fetch from the API for some reason, if the API key is not working, or if you are rate limited, then we can easily take it from our data, because this is a sample response. We have a types that represents the type of one of these APOD with the URL of the image, title, explanation, and so on. We have an API folder that helps us fetch our API NASA Gov. It's a very simple call to the API. It appends the API key, specify the start and the end date. You can adjust them here or make them even dynamically by parameters, but that's extra. And it returns the response. That's it. Lastly, we have a component that renders one of these APOD on the screen. We're gonna see that in a moment, because we're gonna use it to render a flatlist. So let's actually do just that. Let's go ahead in our app index.tsx and start by, I think I'm gonna clean everything up here. And I don't even need these ones. I don't even need the view. I'm gonna start with an empty fragment. Now in our homepage, I want to render a list of these APODs. To render a list, we need a flat list. Let's also go ahead and import the dummy data, for example, APODs JSON from. I'm gonna go one directory up, then in source data, APODs JSON. And let's import the file APOD list item that is responsible of rendering one of these items on the screen. So now having flat list data and how to render this data, we can put them together as a flat list. For the data, let's do APODs JSON. And for the render item, this should be a function that we can destructure the item, which will be one individual item from our array. So for example, this one. And what we can do is we can render APOD list item by sending the APOD this item. And just like that, we need to close the flat list as well. So we have flat list, data coming from the JSON, and render item with APOD list item. And just like that, we already have a list of astronomy pictures that are really beautiful, and we can scroll through it. Perfect. Let's, instead of using the data from the JSON, let's define a state variable for apods and set apods, which is going to be a useState. And yes, we can initialize it right now with the data from the JSON, but in a moment we're gonna fetch this data. Now we can, in the flatlist, we can use the data that is coming from our state variable, like this, and we're back to normal, but now the data is coming from a state. Another thing that we have is a component called full screen image. And this component will simply render an image full screen and will cover everything else behind it. So this is necessary for implementing the Expo blur view later on in the video. But yeah, let's go ahead and render it right after the flatlist. So inside our app index.tsx, after we render the flatlist, let's render the full screen image like that. Okay, the full screen image has a required property onClose and also a URL. So where will we take the URL to display the full screen image from? Well, let's say that in state. So active picture or full screen picture. Let's do set active picture. We're gonna use a useState, and initially it's gonna be null, but it's gonna be of type string. And the apods from the useState, we can type them properly by importing from source types the apod and specifying that this should be an array of them. So we have an active picture. We can send it to this one as URL active picture. Initially it's going to be null and nothing is going to be displayed. For the onClose, what should we do? We should reset, like if we're displaying something, when we want to close it, we simply will set that the active picture is equal to null. But how do we open this full screen image view? For that, our apod list item has a callback function called onImagePress. And with this is going to be called whenever we press on an image, so we can save it in state, set active pictures, using this item dot URL of the image. So now if we press on one of these items, it's rendered full screen. If I press again, we close it. So here, perfect. So here is our very simple application that we build in a couple of minutes, that we put together in a couple of minutes. And again, the pre-made components you can get from the asset bundle, and this flat list with everything. You can have a look here how we implemented it. Yeah. Another thing that we can do, but we're gonna do that in a moment. I just wanted to have a look how this application looks on web. So if I press in our Expo CLI W, this should open the application in web. Let's wait. And we see the same list of items here in the web. Like the full screen view is a bit messed up because we can scroll through it, but I think it does the job of showcasing everything that we need for today. Perfect. And as well, of course, it works on Android as well. Anyway, the next step is going to be to, instead of using the dummy data apods JSON, I'm gonna actually remove it from here. Let's say initially it's going to be null, and I'm gonna add a check if apods is still null. I want to return an activity indicator to showcase the loading state. Yes, we see it there. Now, when this component mounts, I want to fetch the apods from the API. So using a use effect, we can execute a function when the component mounts by providing the empty dependency array here. Now, all we have to do is we will call the function from API apods, fetch apods. So back in our app index, let's simply call fetch apods that is imported from source API. And you can do a sync await here, but because it's an use effect, it's much easier to just do then. And what should happen with the result? We should call the set apods with that result by sending the apods that are coming from the API here. And what do we see? We see some data here, and you should also see the same data. Because if we look in the API apods, we see that the API key that is used defaults to demo key. And here is where we will talk about environment variables. And the first feature that I want to showcase coming in as a new feature coming in Expo SDK 49. Yes, starting from this version, we will be able to use .env file to specify our environment variables. And this is really handy when we have, for example, API keys or different API keys and configuration depending on the environment. So for example, locally you want to connect to your development API. In the staging, you want to connect with a staging API. In production, you want to connect with production API. So with this approach, we can have different environment files for different environments, and using that, use them as we would use in web development, in backend developments, and so on. So to do that, all we have to do is create a new file, .env, and here, how did we call it? We called it Expo public API key. Let's define it, and let's set it with demo key. Save. If we're gonna say like 1, 2, 3 and save, we're gonna see that, let's refresh. We don't see anything here because this is not a valid API key. So let's go back to the demo key here. Let's refresh our application. And as you can see, we don't have to even restart the server for the updated environment variable to take effect. The only thing that we have to do is refresh our application by double pressing R or by pressing R in the CLI and reloading the application. That's it. Now, as you can see, we have this Expo public at the beginning, and this is very important to understand. If the environment variable is prefixed with Expo public, everywhere in our application where we will use process.env.expo public and something, these variables, these environments, they will be actually replaced with the actual value from here, like with demo key, when the application is going to be built for production. So that means that our environment variables that are prefixed with Expo public, they will be included in the binary application that will be released to the stores. And it's important to understand that this does not guarantee that security of these environment variables, because anyone which can decode the binary, the APK or the iOS file, they can get access to that environment variable. And in fact, like anywhere, any client, like a web client, like a website or a mobile client, should never store secret keys. Only publicly available keys, like a public API key that you also want to protect, but if something bad happens, you simply change it and that's it. So never store like passwords or secret keys for APIs, because this is not the right place to do it. It's only for variables that we want to somehow protect, and even when maybe variables that are different in different environments, like the API keys, public API keys. Okay. So that's our environment variables in Expo. Let's see what's the next one. Okay. Going into the next feature that I wanted to show is the new and improved debugger that now also includes the possibility to inspect network requests. What do I mean by that? Let's actually have a look. So if I go here, maybe I can open the environment. We're gonna need it in a moment. Let's open the terminal here with the Expo CLI. And as you can see, to open the debugger, we simply have to press J here. So let's press J, and this will open the DevTools. Let me try to zoom in. This DevTools was here even before, but now what's possible is a new tab here, the Network tab. And the Network tab, if I'm gonna refresh our application, come on. We see all the requests that the application is doing on the network, and we can inspect it as you are familiar with inspecting network requests, for example, for web applications. So this is very handy to debug why something is not working, or maybe to see, for example, here, the exact data that we received back from the server, and make sure that what you receive from the server is actually what you expect. You can look at the headers, at the response headers, at the request headers, payload to see like what API key and other variables that you sent. And with a preview and response is the data that we get back. Okay, so as I said, it's really handy to debug like why APIs, if our application is not working for some reason, you're gonna see like, what is happening here? Like, is it from my code, or is it actually, come on here, I need to, yeah. Is it from my code, or maybe like a network request failed? If you open the network request, we right away see that actually this request failed with a status code 403, and we can look at the payload, we can see the API key and why, and in the preview, we can even see the error, API key invalid. You can also see a very nice feature is you can see even the images that are loaded through the network with their sizes and all the timing to debug like performance issues and all the good stuff. Okay, that's the network inspector for our Expo applications, and I really love it, and I think it's going to help a lot for applications that are intensively using the network for the API or even loading files. Anyway, the next one is the also comes to help us improve the debugging experience, because yes, during the State of React Native survey, a lot of people voted that the most painful thing about React Native is the debugging experience, and companies like Expo and even the open source libraries are investing a lot of resources and time to make the debugging experience better for us. So thank you very much for that. And the next thing besides the network inspector is the React DevTools that now comes pre-installed and we don't have to configure it. So to open it, also in the terminal, press Shift M for more tools, and here we can scroll down until we get to the Start React DevTools. We can open it up here, and here we have our DevTools. What we can do with it, we can press on this, select an element on the page to inspect, and basically how you would inspect elements on a website. For example, if I hold the mouse over this one, loading React 3. Okay, maybe, yes, I had to reload. And this is the whole hierarchy of our components for this small application. So for example, if we hover over some of these elements, come on. For example, here we got to the text that is rendering the value we're text here, 3 galaxies Draco. And we see, if we move up the tree, I'm gonna maybe zoom in for everyone to see it better. We're gonna get to pressable view apod list item. This is a component, and we can debug like what properties did the apod list item component received, and this can help us debug these properties. You can even update this. So for example, if that title, we will change here to maybe test if a longer title will look good. You can update it like this. You can change, and this right away updates here. If you don't like something, you can even press delete to delete it from here. Remember that it was possible to actually delete it. And also very cool is the debugging, like the different cell renderer inside a flat list. So here is our whole flat list, and we see the cell renderer that is rendering every single item from our list. First, second, third, and so on. So yeah, this one can help you improve the performance. It can help you with debug the state, props, the hierarchy. What's going on here? It doesn't want to do the profiling right now. But anyway, it's a very useful tool. So yeah, let me know if you like it and how you are using the React DevTools. Also, when it comes to debugging, I covered this previously in our newsletter, but the new extension for VS Code called Expo Tools, let's see, Expo Tools here, helps us debug our application right in our VS Code. However, I didn't actually got it to properly work. So if anyone has experience with this and got it to working, let me know. I would like to test it out. So the way it would work is you'd start the Expo debug application on device and simulator. And to be honest, like I didn't use the VS Code debugger that often in my experience. Console log is always working. For example, I know I can add a breakpoint here to the fetch, and we can see like what's the base URL. So if I'm gonna reload, it's too zoomed in. Yeah, anyway, I'm not gonna stop here. As I said, don't have a lot of experience with this debugger, and something is not properly working here. It's always crashing the application. But anyway, the next one that I'm excited about is the Expo. Actually, it's a very small feature. Maybe not a lot of people are using it, but if you are using, let's say, the Expo blur view, where is it? Expo Blur View, which previously was available only on iOS devices. Now it's also available on Android devices. So all we have to do is to install the Expo Blur View. Let's go ahead and do that in our application. Maybe I can do a git status. You see that .env is here, so maybe you want to add it to git ignore, or at least the .env .local. But I'm gonna actually add this one as well. So if I do git status now, it's only source, git ignore, okay, git. Query and render a list of AirPods. Okay, so as I said, the next step is to have a look at the Expo Blur View, and I'm gonna do that by installing the Expo Blur View library in our application. Is the debugger still running? Need to stop it. Yeah, perfect. Disconnected. Okay, so we installed Expo Blur View. Now, while we are changing something, let's go ahead and also run the application on an Android device. And here is gonna be rendered, and we can go ahead and implement this Blur View as part of a background for the full screen image viewer. Right now, we simply render a view with white background, and this component is located in the full screen image view here. So all we have to do is import Expo or Blur View from Expo Blur. Now we can replace the root view with the blur view. We can remove the background white to make it transparent. And by default, we already see the blur view behind the image. We can adjust the amount of blur using the intensity. The default one is 50, and it goes from 3, for example, very small blur, all the way to, it goes from 0 to 100. I just show 3 to showcase a very small one. In our case, 50 I think is nice to still show something behind the scenes and render the image on top. Hopefully it's gonna start on Android. Come on, what's going on? Android, something is happening with Android. Doesn't want to install, but we're gonna make it. The thing is that, yeah, like now, the same blur view is available on Android as well. The only thing is that on Android, the blur view is quite expensive, and it's recommended to only use it with cautious, like if possible, render only one blur view at a time to make sure that it doesn't affect the performance of application very much. Anyway, I don't know what's happening with my Android. It's in this state at the moment. Oh, here it is. Maybe I can unlock it. How can I? What's the password? Okay. Still here. Yeah, the application is running, is bundling, and while that is happening, I can have a look at the comments. Yes, the Blur View is a bit expensive on Android. On iOS, there is a native Blur View component. So on iOS, it works perfectly fine. On Android, it's a bit expensive. So use it only when necessary. So as you can see, yes, it's working the same. We can also adjust the intensity here, and it will display perfectly fine. Okay, so we see it on Android. I can easily close our Android emulator, and we can have a look at some other things. For example, another cool feature from Expo. Here we have it. From Expo. I mean, I'm not sure like if it's necessarily with Expo SDK 49, but the cool thing is that macOS with their silicon, their own chips, like the M chips, they allow us to run iOS applications natively on our macOS. What does that mean is that now we can actually run Expo Go as a native macOS application. So if you don't have a simulator, you can simply install the Expo Go application. As you can see, like if I'm gonna do that, you see that this is an Expo Go application. It's not a simulator. We can log in and then we can start the application and it should work. There are still some bugs in the application, but most of the things are working. So this can be a great solution for people that have maybe an older version of MacBook, but in that case, it's not gonna run because it needs silicon like the M chips, right? Probably. Anyway, it's gonna be helpful like if you don't have a simulator, you don't even need Xcode installed. All you have to do is go ahead in this test flight build, download test flight on your macOS by looking at the App Store, then join the beta for the Expo Go. Maybe later it's not going to be for test flight, maybe it's going to be right away as a native application. So if I open test flight, you can see that here I have an Expo Go, which I can open, and this is our Expo Go application that can run our React Native application without even needing a simulator, emulator, or even a physical device. That's pretty neat. All right, so what else we wanted to cover today? I wanted to mention that the Expo modules now has a new ability to create local modules, and this would be helpful if you have to write some native code in your Expo application. Previously, what you had to do is create a separate package, import it in your application, and use it that way. Now you can create this package, this native package, locally in your application directly. So we will not have time to get our hands into this one. Maybe if you're interested, let me know down below and I can prepare something specifically about Expo modules. Another cool thing is the EAS Insights. So this is a new service from EAS. It's already available if you have deployed applications through Expo updates. At the moment, it works automatically for the applications that, again, as I said, are deployed or are using Expo updates. I don't have actually any application here in this account. Oh, no. Give me just 1 second. For example, if you open any project on the dashboard of EAS of expo.dev, you can scroll down and see here. Here should be insights. Here, overview and insights. At the moment, I will not have like any data, but you will see two graphs. Users by platform. It will specify which platform is dominant, Android or iOS, and also users by application version. That's also going to be available out of the box. If you want more insights about the usage of your application, all you have to do is install the Expo Insights in your project using npx expo install Expo Insights, and this will provide like extra insights for this, but you have to have EAS enabled. I don't have EAS for this project. And lastly, to cover some of the updates that are also important for us to remember, but maybe we will not implement it right away. For example, at the moment we can selectively opt out of package version validation for the compatibility with Expo SDK. So the thing is that why are we installing libraries with npx expo install? npx expo install instead of running it with npm install. We are doing this in order for Expo to point us to the right version that is supported by the Expo SDK that we are using. So for example, if Expo SDK 49 is compatible with version, let's say 3 of Reanimated at this moment, and after a couple of months Reanimated publishes a new version, version 4, in that case, with Expo SDK 49, it might not work out of the box. So that's why Expo has strict rules of the compatibility between Expo SDK and the libraries that we are using. The thing is that sometimes we want to, we know what we are doing, we have tested, and we know that, hey, like I'm pretty sure like this library with the newest version is what I need. It works, I tested it. I take my own responsibility, and I don't want Expo to verify this and to always alert me that there is a library that is not compatible. So what we can do is we can simply, where is it? Version. With Expo install exclude, we can exclude specific, for example, in the package.json inside Expo, then inside install we can add exclude, and we can provide here an array of libraries, for example React Native Reanimated, and Expo will not complain about the difference in this whenever we are installing a new library or whenever we are doing Expo fix. Anyway, that's something to remember. What else? The scheme in our app.json that, as I said before, is used for the deep links, here the scheme, previously was possible to assign only a string. But now if you have different schemes for your application, you can add it as an array. So for example, Facebook most probably has FB and also the Facebook. So both FB double dots this will open the application, and Facebook double dots this will open it. So if you also need this multiple schemes for your application, now it's possible with an array. Here, Expo Development Client has experimental support for Fabric, which is the new architecture. I haven't tried that yet, but that's what we learned from the release notes. TypeScript has been updated to 5.1.3, so Previously it was 4 point something, now it's 5. That's good. Again, the Expo SDK 49 comes pre-installed with React Native 0.72.3, and it includes like all the updates that we saw in React Native 0.72. And if you haven't checked that out, we have a video on the channel. Do we have a video on the channel? We have a post on our blog post. So go to notjust.dev, and under the blog we have a specific post about React Native 0.72 with all the updates. And one more thing is the Expo dropped the support for SDK 46 in order for people to start upgrading and for them to have less version of SDKs to support. And in the next release, they will drop even 47 and 49. So it's a good time right now to go ahead and upgrade your application. And to do that with Expo is pretty easy because in React Native, it's very hard to upgrade your libraries. With Expo Go, it's super simple. And here, like if you scroll down to the upgrade guide, all we have to do is, I wanted to actually showcase this to you with a real project, but we are running out of time. I have some meetings with some startups that I'm advising, so I really have to be there in a couple of minutes. But go ahead and follow this guide because it should be straightforward. You will have to install the Expo 49 in your application using npm install Expo 49. Then to upgrade all the other dependencies to match 49, use npx expo install fix, and this will upgrade the other dependencies to match the compatible versions of the 49th version. Check out the other things. I think that should be everything in most of the cases. So yeah, you will also have to upgrade the Xcode to 14 if you haven't already. If you use Expo Go, make sure to update it from the stores. And yeah, that's kind of it. All right, so that was Expo SDK 49 in under 1 hour with real practical examples of how this affects you. Guys, let me know if you enjoy this style of videos of covering the updates, because for me personally, when I just read release notes, it doesn't ring a lot of bells. Like I have to sit down and try it in a real application to see it for myself, because I don't know, I don't believe it. Like you can say like that is doing a lot, but I have to try it to see it and then connect with those like, oh, that's how it will help me in future project. And by doing that, it will increase the chances that I'm gonna actually start using the new features in the next projects instead of continue using like old patterns of how we always have done things. So make sure to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this one, hit the notification bell, and because tomorrow we are continuing the same project that we started today, but we're gonna cover Expo Router v2. And that one is even more exciting because Expo Router is so new, and with the version 2, it includes so many new features that we didn't have before when building mobile applications. So tomorrow is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to generate a static site using Expo. We're going to host it somewhere, and we're going to make it available for everyone to join, to see. We're going to look how this happens with improved search engine optimization, how to do it with dynamic paths, and so on. So a lot of things coming up tomorrow. I prepared a lot of cool, fun, interesting things. So make sure to actually go now to that video and hit notify me, or if you're watching afterwards, it should be already here. So maybe we'll put it somewhere here or maybe here. I don't remember where these things are put. And thank you very much, everyone who joined me live. I really have to run in 40 seconds. Oh, I'm actually late. So see you tomorrow, guys. I'll make sure to go through the live chat after the meeting to see what are your opinion about this. All right, have a good day. Bye-bye, guys.